Welcome to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subculture, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your tour guides for this deep dive of Sam Raimi's 1993 swashbuckler fantasy horror comedy, Army of Darkness.
1993. I had 1992 written in my notes. I guess maybe it was a little bit of a kind of a crossover or a staggered release.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's listed kind of under both years. They took it to festivals in 92, but it was released theatrically in 93. So I went with that.
All right. Yeah. That sounds good to me. I mean, I remember when this came out, there were a lot of people who were really hyped about it coming out because they were big fans of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. And so they made kind of a big deal about this happening. And I was not one of those people because I'd never seen those two. I know the first two. I know there's a lot of people who were fronting about being super cool with more underground movies, but I was never like the big film guy. I was way more of a music fronter.
Yeah. So I remember this had a very strange ad campaign. I watched a bunch of the old theatrical trailers and the TV spots and everything, and they don't tell you it's a sequel, but they act like you should know who this guy is.
Yeah.
And I was a little baffled by these movies because the tone is real hard to get a handle on. Like, is this a horror movie or a comedy?
A comedy, yeah.
But I remember the older kids in art class, because this came out while I was a freshman, and the older, hipper kids that had the scoop were talking about Evil Dead 2 and how that movie ends and how this, this is picking up where that left off. And I knew Evil Dead 2 as the scary box at the bookstore, because it's got just that skull that's kind of looking back at you on the cover. And that was always a movie that I looked at the box, but was like a little afraid of as a kid.
Yeah, I was also hearing about this from other people when it came out, but I wasn't super interested in it. I don't even know when the first time I saw it was, but it was in the 90s, probably after the theatrical release. I don't think I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, so
probably from Hollywood Video.
Probably, yeah. This is definitely a movie my parents wouldn't rent for me when I was 14 years old. It had bad reviews, and it's not something they'd be interested in, and that's the death knell. If Siskel and Ebert thumbs downed it and they didn't want to see it, I was never going to get to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
But luckily, my buddy Ryan Whitney bought a bootleg of the director's cut, and I copied it. And so that was the version of this movie that I knew. This is probably only the third.
A copy of a bootleg of the director's cut. Nice.
Yeah. And so this is maybe only the third time I've watched the theatrical version of this movie, but I've seen the director's cut infinity times.
Wow, you're so underground and cool. Yeah, I think this was an interesting movie choice. I like that this is kind of a meta trifecta. I'm pretty sure this fits it all. And we want to review what a meta trifecta is for any new divers we got out there.
Well, so as a podcast that explores cult classics, subculture, and geek media, this checks all three boxes. This is sort of it's a cult classic for sure. Yeah. It is thoroughly adopted. The Evil Dead trilogy is adopted by the subculture, like the horror punk
not
and
just
gore metal and
movie nerds, but like metalheads and other nerds and all that.
You see a lot of Evil Dead patches on battle jackets. It's one of those. It's got that subculture appeal, and it's got the geek appeal. This is like a borderline superhero movie. It's thoroughly, Dark Horse put out an adaptation of this movie, coinciding with the release, and there's been tons and tons of Army of Darkness and Evil Dead comics.
I think it's a superhero movie for crust punks.
Ash is a really interesting sort of like, I think of him is sort of like the heroic version of Dante from Clerks. Like, because he is the retail superhero.
Yeah, and we both worked retail. That's where we initially met. So I feel for him with the retail stuff. So this thing grossed 21.5 million, and it was made for 11 million. So it's kind of interesting to me how they kind of build themselves or build this movie as almost like a underground independent production or whatever. I don't even know what vibe you would call it, but $11 million is a lot of money.
Yeah. So Sam Raimi, hot off the success of Darkman, which he also made for Universal. Universal was eager to make another movie with him because that ended up being the sleeper hit of the year it came out. And they asked him, what do you want to do? And he says, I want to make a third Evil Dead movie. And they wrote him the check.
There you go. I mean, it more than doubled its money, or almost doubled its money.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
And more importantly, because they didn't really consider this a successful film theatrically, but the home video has been bonkers. This movie has been re-released so many times. There's like 87 releases of it.
Yeah, this is basically why, why Bruce Campbell just has a continuous paycheck forever.
Definitely.
Just permanent residuals. All right, so do you want to roll for initiative?
Sure, let's get into it.
8.
13.
All right, go ahead. I've got 3 things.
Me too. So, okay, first up, this is fresh news.
Bringing us another death.
Comic book artist Neil Adams passed away at the age of 80. This is a guy, he revitalized Batman in the 1970s. He's basically responsible for the Dark Knight detective version of Batman, the popular, enduring version of Batman.
The one that inspired Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah, among other things. And co-creator of Ra's al Ghul, the Man-Bat, John Stewart Green Lantern, who's one of the more well-known versions of Green Lantern. Also did a lot of work at Marvel, notably on the X-Men and the Silver Age.
Nice.
Extremely influential artist and also a campaigner for creators' rights, as far as like getting artists their original art back and really trying to, he wanted to unionize cartoonists, which didn't happen, but he did a lot for creator rights, and he's a pinnacle of the community. So it's sad to see him pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where you figure if someone was making waves and making big moves in the 70s and stuff, those people are going to start or have already started falling away. It's just how it goes, especially when you're into legacy stuff like comic books or D&D, like with Gary Gygax being gone and Dave Arneson's still around. So it's just these older fellas that were early geeks before being a nerd was cool.
Trailblazers.
Yeah, they're falling away.
So R.I.P. Neil Adams. What do you got?
All right, so I'm gonna go R.I.P. Twitter. Just wanted to talk about Elon Musk buying Twitter because we call out Twitter every episode at Deep Dive the Meta. And the platform has been purchased and the deal's not fully inked. The ink isn't dry, as they say, but it's pretty much going to happen. And I think it's an interesting topic, something that geeks everywhere online have been talking about. I know all of the D&D people, the writers and all of that, they're all on Twitter big time. That's their main social media. And so there's a lot of people that have been closing down their Twitter account.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I don't know what to think. I'm not closing down my Twitter unless something changes. Like if they make it like a pay to play, like promote your stuff, then I'm not into that.
Well, I'm of the policy that all these tech billionaires are all supervillains. Sure. So Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos are all out to destroy the world. And that doesn't stop me, I guess, hypocritically from using these platforms.
Sure.
Because they're very available and convenient. But yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, all 3 of those dudes, I have their apps installed on my phone.
They're listening right now.
Multiple from each. Audible, Amazon, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I think that's Elon's only app that I have.
Yeah.
I know he has a Starlink internet app but I don't have that.
Yeah, and this is not like you said, the ink's not dry on this. So this might still not happen, but he seems to want it. And when you have pockets that deep and a desire for anything, you get it eventually.
Well, and the Twitter board is up against the wall because they're legally required, or they can be sued if they don't uphold shareholder interests.
Right.
So he offered something, I don't know, it's like $12 more per share than it was valued at.
Right.
So that means if they don't accept the offer, they're going contrary to shareholder interests, and they can get sued by their very shareholders who support the buyout.
Yeah.
The people who stand to get really rich because they're getting 20 or 30% more than the valuation of the stock.
Yeah.
So basically, if they don't accept it, they're getting sued. If they do accept it, they lose their job, because he's already said he wants to reduce Twitter board pay to zero, and he doesn't think people who never use Twitter should be on the board, of which half of the board members don't use Twitter.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, he like was tweeting out the screenshots of their accounts, and like their last tweet was like years ago. They've only ever tweeted like 5 times, that kind of nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, other than for the podcast, I don't tweet really. I just lurk.
Yeah, I'm mostly a lurker myself. I retweet mostly, and sometimes I respond to other people's tweets here and there. But anyway, that's enough about Iron Man buying Twatter. Go ahead. What's next?
Okay. On April 22nd, Vin Diesel posted a 19-second video on Instagram celebrating the first week of production on Fast 10 or Fast X.
Nice. Jason Momoa is in this one, right?
Yeah. Jason Momoa is added to the cast. And Justin Lin was supposed to be there to direct this. He's directed most of the best episodes.
He stepped, right?
That's it. Yeah. And if you watch this video, it's so funny. Vin Diesel's like cheesing for the camera, and Justin Lin is sitting behind him looking awkward. It looks like a hostage video.
Dang.
And 4 days later, Justin Lin backed out. So Universal is in a pickle right now. Because
who are they going to get to do this? There's too much money not to.
Oh, yeah. And the movie's already started production. So insiders are estimating it's the delay with the director leaving is costing them between $600,000 and $1 million a day. The second unit has just kept on filming.
It's like car shit and whatever.
Yeah, car shit, close-ups of feet on gas pedals, and just all of that stuff that the head director doesn't have to be there for. And they are scrambling to fill that director's chair.
Let's get James Gunn in there.
That would be really interesting. I was leaning towards another James Wan, who directed Fast 7, I think.
Okay.
I think post-production on Aquaman is done, so he's technically available. If you back the money truck up to him right now, you might be able to get him.
For sure.
But yeah, I think this might be another, Vin Diesel's personality strikes again. He's really tough to deal with.
But who cares? He prints money.
That's he better start printing money right now at the pace of $1 million a day.
Yeah. I mean, oh man, imagine a Tim Burton's Fast 10.
That'd be so weird. What would it be, like Model T Fords?
And like Zeppelin. They have a Zeppelin sky chase through the mountains.
They really just like a real curveball, bizarro director in there that just a David Lynch.
Yeah.
Fast 10.
Man, if David Lynch did it, it would be amazing. I would love that.
All right, what you got?
So as all the divers know, survival shows are my jam. I love unscripted television. And we got a BOGO. Season 9 of Alone starts soon.
Okay.
Starts at the beginning of June. Supposedly it was going to debut at the end of May, but last thing I saw, they pushed it back. But anyway, so we've got Alone Season 9, which I'm stoked for, but I haven't seen anything of. But they also have Naked and Afraid XL started its new season, and there's an episode out. I started it, and this one's crazy because it's a 60-day challenge, and they're in the Amazon rainforest. And they're bringing back, they call them legends, people who have completed the 40-day challenge, and then some other people. So there's some, if you've ever watched any of the other ones. So I think the show Naked and Afraid started off as kind of a gimmick, like weird people thrown together, survive for 10 days.
Right.
But it has become, as you saw that there are some like experts at survival, it has become a legit survival show, like the ones they did in South Africa where they're like hunting warthogs and shit and succeeding.
Yeah.
And so now they're doing these long ass crazy challenges. And it's really fucking cool. So I'm enjoying that we got some new survival shows going on.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm way behind on that stuff. I watched a bunch of Alone at your recommendation, and then when I kind of ran out, I haven't kept up as new stuff has been coming out.
Yeah, well, make sure you're all caught up on season 8 of Alone because season 9 starts soon. And just for the record, Alone is the best of the survival shows. It's the top tier. The other ones are just for fun to fill the time.
All right, so my final thing, and this is just a quickie, CinemaCon is going on right now. This is where all the movie studios basically preview everything for theater owners. And they're getting all these sneak peeks of stuff that we won't see for a long time and announcements and everything. And surprising no one, a sequel to Matt Reeves' The Batman with Robert Pattinson has been greenlit.
Oh, big surprise.
Yeah, that movie made bazillions of dollars and was a huge success. And so, of course, this is going to happen. But I'm still happy about it because it was great. And so I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, I can't remember who was telling me. I was talking to somebody about watching it, and they just said it was so fucking long. Like, it was way too long, and they just got tired of it.
It's very long. It is... it's
like Justice League long.
Not quite. It's 3 hours.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's too long.
It's an epic film. It's long. When you're watching at home, who cares?
That's true. You can just pause it and get up.
Yeah. But
come back.
I don't think, all the Nolan movies are over 2 hours long. Not quite 3, but, I don't mind a long movie.
If I'm watching it at home.
Well, and if it's paced well, I don't mind a long movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Because sometimes a 90-minute movie can feel like a long movie, and sometimes a 3-hour movie can fly by.
That's true. Exactly. All right. So my last piece of news is music related. Kirk Hammett has a solo EP that he released.
It's good.
Yeah, it is. It's called Portals. It's got 4 songs. It's instrumental, and this is the first big Metallica side project. He writes a lot more than they could ever use for the Metallica albums, especially since he's got sober. He doesn't drink anymore, so he just plays guitar all the time. He's a real enthusiast, even in his late 50s. So he got the blessing of the band to put out a solo EP. And he said he was really shocked that they were willing to let him do it. I think it says a lot that it's just a solo. It's just Kirk Hammett. It's not a different band. I think that is probably, they don't feel any threat from that because it actually kind of enhances the Metallica brand.
Yeah. And they put it out on their label. It's on Blackened. So they're getting a piece of it.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's good. I listened to it once. I didn't, because it was one of the drops for Record Store Day this last weekend. I didn't get it, but I was real close to picking that up because it's a good album.
Yeah. And I mean, Kirk Hammett's probably the dude in the band you would want to hang out with.
Yeah.
I mean, especially you, because he's like a horror monster movie fan.
Yeah, I just want to look at all his collection. He's got an amazing collection. And he's actually exhibited it because he did a convention in San Francisco. I can't think of what the name, Carnival or something like that, like a horror convention, and basically had a Kirk Hammett museum where his collection was on display.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, he's super dope. It's like almost like film score music with heavy metal guitar leads in it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this is definitely up my alley.
Yeah, it's a keeper. I would want to see his guitar collection if I was hanging out with him. Like let me play Greenie, the famous Les Paul that Peter Green owned. I want to play that guitar. Supposedly Gibson, since he's now a Gibson artist, supposedly they've taken Greenie, his famous Les Paul, and they're making exact replicas of it. They took it into the custom shop and scanned it and all this stuff, and they're going to be making reissues of his famous guitar. All right, so that's it for our news segment. Let's go ahead and see what we've got for our podcast fuel.
All right, today's podcast fuel, in line with Army of Darkness, is Dark Thoughts from Bear Lick Brewing here in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
It's a black IPA, also known as a Cascadian Dark Ale. And for once, the brewery wrote us good copy. A classic IPA with maniacal evil, Dark Thoughts CDA is brewed with cold steeped roasted malts for an eerily smooth darkness, dry hopped with 6.66 pounds of pungent Columbus hops. And it's also claiming to be 6.66 ABV, and for once, listing the IBUs, 67 IBUs.
It says 66.6 on the can.
66.6?
Yeah, right here, IBU. So 666 IBU.
Oh, okay. That conflicts with what it says in Untapped, but that is more on brand.
They rounded, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure both of those numbers are bullshit.
They're not bullshit. They're maniacally evil.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, I like this beer. It's good, and it's definitely tastes like a CDA. It's a little, I would say it's got a little more bite to it than I'm used to. It's a little anti-smooth, but that's all right. I'm okay with a beer every now and then that's not trying to be an easy drinker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this makes me think. Just quick sidebar on beers, because there's an inverted pentagram on the can, and when I was shopping for beer, probably last episode, I was at New Seasons, and a nice man came up and he was going to ask me about beer or whatever, because I was sitting there nerding on the cans, and then he saw the Grains of Wrath. And he saw the pentagram on the can and the name Grains of Wrath, and he goes, "Oh, pentagram and wrath, lost me there," and turns around and beelines it out of the beer section.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Satan came upon him that day.
I know.
And he was said, like, "Not today, Satan."
And he said, "I shouldn't be drinking this devil's water."
Yeah. I mean, he lives in the Northwest. I mean, this devil's water is what we drink here.
It's our chief export since the timber industry went down.
Yeah. All right, so let's take a quick break, and then we will get into this deep dive.
Welcome back, divers. Let's dive into Army of Darkness, 1993, Sam Raimi.
So this movie starts off, and it basically just recaps Evil Dead, 1981 Evil Dead, and 1987 Evil Dead 2 by showing us, it explains to us what's the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and how Ash got to where he is, and why he's in a slave yoke, and all of that.
Yeah, because it actually opens on him being marched in chains, and it's got this voiceover narration that, "My name is Ash, and I'm a slave."
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. I love the beginning of this movie. This recap. This is all kind of at the insistence of the Universal Studios.
Yeah.
They wanted you to be able to drop in and watch this movie without having seen the earlier films or even knowing those films exist. And they do a surprisingly good job of front loading it. They use a lot of footage straight from Evil Dead 2. And there's just the stuff with Bridget Fonda playing Linda is new, but everything else is basically just straight out of Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, basically, like, they go to a cabin in the woods, and Linda's possessed and killed by the book, and it just gets crazy. There's just a bunch of gonzo stuff here, and there's this spell that sends Ash through an extra dimensional portal.
Right.
So this is immediately like a big supernatural, crazy horror movie immediately.
Yeah. And you just dropped right into it and start getting like jackhammered with information. But it's effective because I didn't see the earlier Evil Dead movies for years.
Yeah.
I had only seen this one, and I really didn't have any problem following it. The Evil Dead series is fairly bizarre in that Evil Dead 2 is more or less a remake of the first Evil Dead, which was a remake of an amateur film that they had made called Within the Woods. So they basically made the first story 3 times.
Yeah.
And then Evil Dead 2 was intended to be the Army of Darkness film. They originally intended to call it Medieval Dead, and it was going to take place in medieval times like this. But they didn't have the budget for it, so they ended up basically remaking a kind of a funnier version of the first movie.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, and divers, we're going to address the cat in the room. You will occasionally hear meows. There's really no way around it. We have let them into the pod cave so that they will only occasionally meow in greeting rather than whining at a door.
Yeah.
But to those of you who contacted us and said, is there a cat? There's actually 2.
Yeah, shouts to Diver Chris, who is our local Army of Darkness Bruce Campbell superfan, so I know she'll be listening to this episode. The cats are in the room again.
Yeah, we got some black cats in there, so that's on theme for this horror movie. So, I always liked the chainsaw hand. That's what pops out to me like early on is Bruce Campbell's or Ash's chainsaw hand. It looks like when they close up on it, it looks like all the teeth are removed from the chain.
Yeah.
So it's just like a smooth, like almost like a bicycle chain on the bar. And some of these effects in the early part of the movie where they're kind of recapping things, oh man, they're pretty bad. They're real low budget.
Yeah, so Evil Dead 2, I should have looked up, the budget is significantly lower for Evil Dead 2 than it was for this film. And it was funny, Lisa and I watched Evil Dead 2 before we watched Army of Darkness. And I sent her a GIF from Army of Darkness in our chat, and she's like, the picture on that GIF looks better than the movie we watched yesterday. And it's like, yeah, the budget increased dramatically between the 2 movies.
Yeah, so basically then it kind of, Ash is telling you how he got to where he was. And so it shows him going through the portal along with a car, and he's dropped into 13th century medieval England. Yeah. Where he immediately is kind of surrounded by these knights, and Lord Arthur and his men, they suspect him to be an agent for Duke Henry.
Yeah. So let's not brush over the car. This is a 1973 Oldsmobile Delta 88. This is Sam Raimi's personal car, nicknamed the Classic, and it is featured in all of his films.
Wow.
He manages to get the car into everything. Even The Quick and the Dead, which was a Western, he stripped it down to just the chassis and built a wagon onto it.
Jeez, wow. He's really dedicated to that car being a cameo.
He's a genuine weirdo. Sam Raimi's an auteur filmmaker.
Well, I mean, the car, it's not very cool. And ultimately, it's just kind of a land yacht.
Yeah.
It's one of those uninteresting giant steel monolith cars.
But he calls it the Classic, and it's in all of his movies. And the one that they drop, it gets dramatically flattened. I was pretty impressed with the way the bottom races to meet the top races to meet the bottom.
Yeah, it really kind of self crushes. Sorry, we have a cat battle going on. And so we've got then we're actually sort of present with what's going on in the story. And basically Lord Arthur, played by Marcus Gilbert, is a complete prick.
He is.
And he's like, I say to the pit with him.
Yeah.
And the wise man, who they call Wiseman, like they don't say wise man. I don't know why. Like, it's like a weird...
They sort of dance around Arthurian legend, right? Where obviously this is the Merlin character, but they just never say the Merlin, and they never say King Arthur. They say Lord Arthur. I don't really know why that is.
Yeah, it's not like somebody owns that IP.
But for some reason, they feel the need to dance around it.
Yeah, and so they you then learn that Duke Henry, the Red, played by Richard Grove, is in the slave, marching in line in the slave. What do you call that? The slave caravan? I don't know.
Chain gang.
Yeah, he's marching alongside of Ash, and they take him into this castle. It looks pretty cheesy, the castle.
Yeah, it's true, and there's nowhere in England that looks like this.
No.
This is Southern...
It's like all scrubby and brown everywhere.
It's Southern California, just a little bit north of LA, where,
they just went out in the woods.
Where they used to film Westerns out there. And this looks like it should be a Western, like the setting anyway. But they built a half a castle out there.
They definitely... It looks nothing like England. It's like not even close. And so then... he's getting marched in, and all of the townsfolk are like super shitty to him. They're like throwing rotten fruit or whatever. And then Sheila is informed that her brother died, and she blames Ash for the death of her brother. Or is this supposed to be her husband? I wasn't sure.
No, it was She asks about her brother. Yeah, okay. Sheila and Lord Arthur, the music turns somber, and he informs her that, he fell to Duke Henry's men, and she takes all her wrath out on Ash, spits in his face, etc.
Yeah.
And then when they get marched up to the edge of the pit, and Ash and Duke Henry have words, because Duke Henry is like, "You're not one of my men, lad."
Wasn't that guy in Braveheart? He was one of the random Irishmen,
Scotsman,
Scotsman or whatever.
Let's see, Richard Grove. I got the filmography here, and I don't think so.
Well, he looks like all those random Atlantic Islanders.
Definitely.
So yeah, he's this big red-haired guy, and basically they throw a pit prisoner down into this pit. And when I say pit, divers, if you haven't watched this movie, it's like this looks like something out of like an industrial, like, I don't know, like some sort of like a post-apocalyptic thing. It's like a rusty like orifice in the ground with steel covering, and they like open it and they throw a dude into it, and it's silent. And then he screams, and then there's just an amazingly large blood fountain.
Yeah, I love it.
It's insane, like way more blood than fits in one
person. Yeah, it's awesome, and it sprays, a good 20 feet up into the air, and is kind of carried by the wind and mists out onto the ground, and it is an epic blood fountain.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes out of nowhere, like. I had already braced myself for this movie being cheesy as hell. But then this happens, and I was like, oh, okay, it's like that. You know?
It has its own tone. This is the Army of Darkness, and to a lesser extent Evil Dead 2 are very much their own thing. And Ash, after seeing that, is eager to distance himself from Duke Henry. He's like, wait a minute, you gotta understand, I've never even seen these assholes before. Yeah,
he's pleading for his life, but nope. So he gets he gets thrown down into the pit.
Yeah, and Sheila brains him in the head with a rock.
Man, Sheila's a bitch.
She is at the start, I guess, but she just lost her brother. She's distraught, and she thinks Ash did it. So Ash teeters on the edge, and I want to call out Bruce Campbell's beautiful front flip that he does into the pit. This man is so gifted at slapstick comedy and like physical comedy. No one else could play this role. This is unique to him.
Well, I mean, he's kind of made it his own. It's kind of his thing. I think someone else could do it, but they would do it their own way. Like, I could easily imagine Jim Carrey playing Ash, but it would be
terrible.
It would be a way different. This is terrible.
No,
it's just a different comedian doing their thing. This is intentionally bad. They're not trying to make high cinema. This is Sharknado, tongue in cheek. Like, look at how evil this is.
Jim Carrey. Okay, I would say Jim Carrey's flavor would not be to my liking.
Well, yeah, it would be really.
That's how I'll put it.
Well, I mean, he can be creepy. You saw Cable Guy, right?
I love Cable Guy.
I mean, so it could be good. So anyway, he gets thrown down there, and the chainsaw gets thrown down to him by Wiseman, played by Ian Abercrombie, after he's getting his ass kicked by this female deadite, which is like this weird witch-looking creature, like obviously some sort of possessed thing. Yeah,
she's like the classic deadite, white eyes and just like a little bit exaggerated features. Whenever someone gets possessed by the deadites, that's kind of the look they go for. And Ash is doing a little too well against her, and so Arthur turns on the spikes. Yeah, and so the two big spiked walls are closing in.
Yeah, you have these crushing walls to the side. You can't have this guy winning.
Yeah, and the crowd's kind of turning to Ash, like they're starting to like him when they see him fighting the deadite. And he quickly dispatches her and is looking how to make his escape when he gets attacked by the second deadite, the pit bitch she's called.
Yeah, and he pulls off his belt and he kind of does like an Indiana Jones whip trick to attach it to the chain to pull him up and out. And he cuts off the hand of the deadite and he ends up getting out of the pit.
Yeah. And he crawls up out there and basically takes charge of the situation now. Ash is now calling the shots, and he starts monologuing to the crowd, and he orders them to free Henry and his men, and they ride out of there. And one of the pit bitch sort of follows Ash out, and he shoots her with the shotgun. And now Ash is calling the shots. He's the big dog. He gives the famous the Boomstick Speech.
Yeah, so I thought this was a pretty cool part of the movie. Like I was on board with Ash at this point because they did him wrong, but he comes out on top, and he says like, your shoelace is untied to Arthur.
To Arthur, yeah. And
Arthur looks down and he decks him. And, classic gag. I don't know. It doesn't feel appropriate here, but it is, whatever. And then he demands that Duke Henry gets set free and gets him on horses, and he rides off. So I thought, hey, Ash is the good guy here. He rescued Henry, but he should have left with Henry. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, but Ash has other priorities. He wants to be sent home. That's what he wants to figure out. And Duke Henry's not the way there.
But why does he think that this place is? Just because there's an old wise man?
The wise man, yeah.
I think he's like, okay, yeah, you got a wizard. This guy can figure some shit out. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool when he blew the end off of Arthur's sword with the gun, and the whole S-Mart sales pitch.
Yeah, I find at this point in the movie, I still know all the words.
Yeah, he's calling them primitive screwheads and primates.
Yeah, next one of you primates eats so much as even touches me. Yeah, at this point, I'm just in love. And I'm talking along with the whole movie, and from there we cut over to Ash being catered to by fair maidens. He's lounging and being fed grapes and turkey legs and having a medieval times fantasy.
Yeah, for sure. So this, he's living the dream at this point. And then Sheila she turns and she seems to be a little more in favor because, if she's like, oh, well, maybe he didn't kill my brother,
Yeah. But Ash is a pretty big dick to Sheila.
Yeah. It's like, first you want to kill me, then you want to kiss me? Blow.
Yeah. Sorry about the cats. A little distracting. And the wise man comes in and he's explained to Ash that he needs to go and quest for the Necronomicon, and then they'll have the ability to send him home. Ash doesn't want anything to do with the Necronomicon. Basically, his life has been fucked since he encountered it. So he's not eager to go find it. But one of the serving winches turns into a deadite. And so Ash has to fight her, and
she gives a spooky monologue, and he gets another one-liner. He's like, "Yo, she bitch, let's go."
Yeah, I call them Ashisms. That's what they're called in my notes.
Okay, yeah, he has a ton of them, and he easily kills her because whatever.
He's the chosen one.
Yeah, and I like how then next he goes to the blacksmith and he like makes himself like a primitive cybernetic.
It's amazing.
There's no way that he could do that, but he's the chosen one.
You saw later we see his like engineering textbooks in the trunk of his car. He was an engineering student at college.
Oh, sure.
So that's given him
cybernetics.
Yeah, exactly. He knows how to do, put pistons in a gauntlet and make it into a hand that he can somehow control.
Yeah,
it's simple. Yeah, it's all cartoon nonsense. The whole movie is 80 minutes of cartoon nonsense.
Yeah, this is kind of like I don't know, like a teenage horror cartoon, like in vibe.
Mm-hmm. It's you have to have cartoon logic. It's very Bugs Bunny. It's very Three Stooges. It's just.
I mean, they even do a whole Three Stooges thing later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it has a mentality, and within the logic of the universe, building a robot hand fits. It has like the air pump of a BB gun on it.
Yeah.
Where would they have got that? I guess that's in the trunk too. He has a Red Ryder BB gun.
He must have had all kinds of shit in that car.
Trunk. Yeah. Well, he was probably a Boy Scout. He's be prepared.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, basically, so he gets his quest. He knows what he needs to do. He kisses Sheila. They seem to have made up. He has his little Ashism there. Give me some sugar, baby.
Yeah.
Which is classic.
She brings him the cool blue shirt that he wears for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, good, I could use a horse blanket. And she hauls off and slaps him, which is like, finally he respects her after that. Like, that put her on that level. In the director's cut, there's a sex scene here. I don't think the movie suffers for its loss. I think the what do you call it? Like the romance cover pose that they have together where he has his shirt open and the wind's blowing their hair.
Yeah.
I was like, that sold it right there. You didn't need to go to the sex
scene. You didn't need to go full room on it. You know?
It's not like that. It's not graphic. It's a tasteful sex scene, but they don't need it. And we cut to Ash riding out on his quest, clearly in Southern California and not England.
Yeah, and so they're like are riding through California, and then he's like rehearsing the line, and he's saying it all wrong.
Yeah,
he's like Klaatu Verada Nikto or Nikto. He's like saying it all fucked up.
So that phrase that comes from the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, and it's just one of these geeky Easter eggs that geeks love to put in things. So I didn't know that till years later, seeing that movie and be like, oh, that's where Evil Dead gets that from. I kept thinking, like, when they're riding through the mountains, that this looks like where Captain Kirk fights the Gorn.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
It probably was, yeah.
And then he enters like this haunted forest, and there's an unseen force pursuing Ash in the woods, some sort of like spirit or something. The horse gets spooked and runs away. We get a whole shitload of shaky cam.
Yes.
That was really in vogue.
Well, this is the shaky cam is an invention of Sam Raimi.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's the opposite of steady cam, which is what you normally would have with a handheld camera that stabilizes it.
Yeah.
They put the camera on a thing so it's rigid, so it does shake, and Sam Raimi runs around chasing Bruce Campbell with it. This is in all of the Evil Dead movies.
I hate shaky cam.
Okay. It's one of Sam Raimi's signatures, basically. So this is the only point in the movie where it feels like an Evil Dead movie, really. Him getting chased through the forest, and then he finds his way to a windmill, and it turns into a cabin in the woods horror movie for a little bit.
Yeah, I thought that the whole windmill thing was really cool.
Yeah, and they achieved that in a really interesting way. It's a forced perspective shot. So Bruce Campbell is running kind of in the far background with the model of the windmill up close to the camera, making it look like he's running to the windmill that's full size.
Oh, wow. That's neat.
This is like a shockingly technical movie for how cheesy it is. There's a lot of really difficult to achieve
tricks.
Yeah, like they kind of like every practical effect technique is used in this movie, which is when it came out, 92, 93. Shortly after this, it's Jurassic Park. Everything is CGI. If this movie was made 2 years later, it's an entirely different movie.
Yeah, it feels old school.
Yeah, and it's really, like I was explaining it to Lisa, it's like a tribute movie. It's a tribute to all of their favorite stuff.
Okay.
Bruce Campbell does a one-man show while they do different homages around him.
Yeah, so like he goes into the windmill and there's a mirror and it gets smashed, and out of all the shards crawl little reflections of ash. So you have all these little ashes running around doing basically like cartoon shit. They have a Gulliver's Travel scene.
Totally. It's very Looney Tunes again. The mirror was looking at him. That was something it was like looking at him weird is what led to him smashing it. And we get 8 little ashes out of the pieces. So this scene is longer in the director's cut. I like this version of it a lot better, the theatrical version.
I mean, this version was even a little long. This was not needed.
Yeah, and then there's even more deleted scene like that extends the scene even longer. So that's where there's like 20 minutes of windmill scene.
Oh God.
It goes on for so long. So this version that's in the theatrical cut is the best version of it.
Huh. Interesting.
So yeah, basically, like you said, they Gulliver's Travel him, right? They tie him to the floor after getting him to bonk his head and stuff, and one of them jumps into his mouth and he swallows it, and it turns into an eye on his shoulder and eventually grows a whole second ash.
Yeah, like a parasitic twin,
And that's the birth of Bad Ash.
Or Evil Ash is what I wrote.
Okay.
But yeah, basically, he has a little ashism there. He's like, good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
That's a good gray morality that he's got. He's very selfish.
Yeah, because another kind of aesthetic change. When they come out of the windmill, the aesthetic of it has turned into a Universal horror movie. Like with the creepy trees and the full moon and the windmill. So the windmill is like evoking Frankenstein, and obviously the full moon's the Wolfman. They even howl at the moon when they're running around. And they have I
think Bruce Campbell was just having too much fun being the little Bruce Campbells.
It does seem like he has a lot of fun with that. I knew that was not going to be a Dave pleaser. When I was watching, I was like, oh, Dave will hate this shit.
It was lame. I mean, let's be realistic.
Did you used to hate it though? Because
I was never a big fan of this. I saw it and I was more, even my young self, I was more amused by the one-liners than I was by
the cartoon nonsense
cheesiness.
Okay.
I think when I was younger, I was even more like too grim for silliness.
That could be. Yeah.
Even today, I think this is too silly.
It's over the line for you.
Yeah. I like a certain amount of silly, but this is a little much.
So the good bad, I'm the guy with the gun, which is what good Ash says to bad Ash when he shoots him in the face. The line in the director's cut is "I ain't that good," which I like that one better. That was one of the things I tried to make notes of the changes and which version I like. I like the director's cut on that. And then he takes Bad Ash back into the into the windmill, straps him to the table, and chops him up with the chainsaw.
Yeah, I thought that was really dark. He just completely quarters this guy and takes his head off, and he buries him in a hole. It's really, really dark.
I love because Badass is talking shit, and he's like, "You'll never find the Necronomicon." He's, "Oh, what's that you got on your face there?" And throws a shovel full of dirt on him. And then he buries him, and it's almost shot for shot the way he buried Linda in Evil Dead 2, even putting the cross into the ground the same way. So it's very, very evocative of the previous film.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I thought that it was grim, like it was suitably macabre. And so then he heads to this graveyard, and it looks very fake. It's very movie set graveyard. It has blue lighting everywhere.
Yeah.
And it looks like you know what it looks like? It looks like something that there's always like one person in a neighborhood that goes over the top for their yard on Halloween. They just totally deck their yard out with spooky shit.
Yeah.
That's what this looks like.
Yeah, I can see that. I thought Nightmare Before Christmas.
They spent like $2,000 at the Spirit store.
The Spirit store didn't exist. This is like the origin of the Spirit store. It's like, what if we sold all the stuff from Army of Darkness?
Yeah, exactly.
The cemetery, it looks very Universal horror, which I guess that's what this is, because it's a Universal Studios horror movie.
There you go.
It's on brand. Ash gets in there, and
I'm much more into Hammer.
That's cheesy too, though. We can't deny that.
I mean, Dracula, the Hammer Dracula was great.
But cheesy.
Not as cheesy as this.
No, well, not intentionally as cheesy as this. This knows it's cheesy. Hammer Dracula is trying to be something. Well, actually, I don't think that's true. I think they knew they were cheesy.
They were a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, that's true too. Anyways, there's 3 Necronomicons. That's the monkey wrench here.
Yes, there's 3 books instead of 1. And he gets sucked into one, and he manages to pull himself out. His face is all stretched. So he does this whole cartoon thing where he's shaking his head back and forth. It reminds me of like something Goofy would do. Like if he got his face sucked in a vacuum, he'd have to shake his head to make it go back to normal.
Or where Daffy Duck gets his bill shot off so it's on his head backwards.
It spins around his head or something. Yeah,
totally.
It's 100% Looney Tunes.
And then the second book bites him, which is obvious. It has a face on it. I mean, you couldn't miss that gag. And it flies around and smacks him in the face, etc. And then finally he gets the third book, and that's when he remembers he needs to say the words.
Yes. And he fucks it up.
Yeah. He's got Klaatu Barada, but can't remember Nikto. He knows it's an N word, but he can't think of what it is. And so he just mumbles his way through it and tries to call it good, but it doesn't work because the Danny Elfman music kicks in, and the Army of Darkness starts rising from their graves.
Yep. And basically he's like trying to mumble and hiss, and it just doesn't work. They do he gets attacked by skeletons, and they do the whole Three Stooges thing, and he gets hit, and he hears Tweety birds, but like, or in his ears. It's like, I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, oh man, it's like, I wanted this to be a lot more of I wanted this to be less comedy and a little more low budget horror. And it has been like at least 20 years. I would say more than that, 25 years since I saw this. And I didn't remember it being this hammy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's bad.
Well, I just
like the Tweety birds.
I will take this time to just point out, I originally suggested we do Evil Dead 2.
Is it a little more horror, a lot more horror?
Yes.
I've seen Evil Dead 2 25 years ago, but
yeah.
I didn't see, this. But the reason we do this one is because this is popular. This was the one that
we're chasing
was
clout.
Big. Well, I mean, this is the same reason we did the Black Album and Nevermind, and we didn't do Master of Puppets and Bleach.
Right.
It's because we're trying to do things that are relatable and more part of the geek media scene.
Yeah.
And so I think this Army of Darkness is that movie.
It is definitely the biggest of the 3 films.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's kind of beside the point. So Ash, he goes through his Three Stooges thing with the skeleton hands, gets back on the horse and rides hard back to the castle. And basically everyone's happy to see him, but the wise man susses him out immediately. He's like, "Did you say the words?" Like, he knows Ash fucked up.
Yeah, he's onto him. And meanwhile, bad Ash rises from the grave and unites the Deadites. And he's like a dark knight of some kind, like a death knight, and he's leading the army of darkness.
And this is really close to a one-man show because Bruce Campbell is the lead and the villain of the movie. He's in just about every scene in the entire movie. Hopefully he had points in this movie. Like, well, he's a co-producer of it.
So and so definitely gets a certain amount of money.
It's what keeps him in Hamburger Helper or whatever he eats.
Do people still eat that?
He strikes me as a guy that would eat Hamburger Helper. I don't know. I don't know why.
When Bruce Campbell listens to this and he's eating sushi or something, he's just gonna be like, "What the fuck, guys?
Hamburger Helper." He says it sounds pretty good, actually.
What kind of peasant do you think I am?
I love the wise man calls him a dung-eating fool.
I like that too.
Everyone loses faith in Ash except for Sheila, but then even Sheila loses faith. He's like, "What?" She's like, "What of those sweet words we spoke?" And he goes, "That's just what we call pillow talk, baby."
Yeah.
And she's sad. Everyone is sad. But the pity party gets short-lived because the winged Deadite flies in and snatches Sheila.
Yeah, and takes her out, and then she's transformed into a Deadite. And Bad Ash, looking like the Kurgan in his full armor.
I love his helmet.
Yeah, and then the Deadite Sheila, she's way cooler than basic Sheila.
You prefer Deadite Sheila?
Oh yeah, she looks badass.
So this is when I thought some movies kind of suffer in the Blu-ray transfer because having watched this primarily on VHS, you couldn't see the wires the same way you can see the wires on the Deadite in the Blu-ray version. It's like, this is too clean. This movie needs a little grime on it.
Yeah. Did you buy this? Do you own it on?
Yeah, I bought the director's cut Blu-ray for this because I'm hung up on that version.
I just got it digitally. Just streamed it.
Yeah, it's on HBO Max, so you don't have to buy the Blu-ray. I just did because I used to own it, an earlier DVD version of it, and it's one of the things that got stolen when my house was burgled.
Oof.
I had all 3 Evil Dead movies, I think,
and they sold it for $1 at
probably.
A pawn shop.
And I think I had like the ones where they're in the Necronomicon cases, so they feel like gross skin,
like human flesh.
Yeah. Bound in actual human flesh. You can get it in Thailand.
Yeah, so basically, it's determined that they're going to have to fight the Deadite army. It's going to be humans versus undead.
Yeah,
and it shows scenes of the army marching, and there's some real cheesy puppetry going on. Like they look very fake. They like make the Crypt Keeper look strikingly real.
Yeah. Well, it's sure it looks fake, but there's a lot going on in these scenes as far as like the combination of rear projection of the stop motion animation, the people in suits, and then the puppets in the foreground, and marching it all together. It doesn't look real, but this is all very difficult to do. It's very complicated.
I appreciate it was complicated, but it turned out cheesy.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out like, I wasn't like, whoa, that's rad. I was more like, oh, that's fucking something. There you go with that.
Fair enough. And the back at the castle, the scout rides up and lets them know that the army of the dead is massing, and they're 2 days ride out, and everyone's losing faith. But Ash gives another hero speech and basically rallies them back together.
Yeah, so they have to go get the Oldsmobile Delta 88. They got to get the textbooks out of there. They got to get help from Duke Henry.
Yeah.
He's got to train them up to be medieval soldiers and use technology and all this stuff. And so in 2 days, he whips them into shape.
Yeah, they make gunpowder, they make bombs and exploding arrows. There's a well-placed Dark Horse Presents comic in the trunk, which good cross promotion because Dark Horse was doing the comic adaptation of the movie. It's just one of these montages, and then the Deadites come and lay siege. And the movie gets real muddy through here. There's just a lot of stuff happening.
So at first, as I'm watching these battle scenes, because it goes from like little interaction to little interaction, it goes going around. It reminded me of a D&D campaign. You're like, oh, okay, whose initiative is it now? Okay, let's settle that. What are you gonna do? Okay, next character.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's Duke Henry's turn. Okay, Riders of Rohan, show up. You do your charge, roll your damage. Okay, next guy. And it goes on. And at first I'm like, really, I'm enjoying it, and I like how Ash is throwing out one-liners like, honey, you got real ugly.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I'm like, why are they still doing this? It's like, come on, this is long. Like, this is the longest part of the movie is the battle.
And this is the short version of it.
It was like, this is like it's an 80-minute movie, and this battle is like half an hour.
And I'm gonna lay that at the feet of Sam Raimi because the movie has two editors, Bob Murkowski, and the other credited editor is ROC Sandstorm, which is a Sam Raimi alias.
Oh God.
And so Bob Murkowski edited the first half of the film, and Sam Raimi edited this back half, basically this battle sequence.
So the first half was tight and the second half was loose.
The second half is real loose, and this is the tighter version of it. It's even longer in the director's cut, but
ROC Sandstorm's terrible editor.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, it's not. The editing is pretty bad in this. But to cut to the chase, they breach the walls. They get in. The Delta 88 comes out. It's now steam powered death coaster, I think they call it. He drives around chopping up Deadites. Deadite Sheila comes. It's all to get us to Good Ash and Bad Ash sword fighting over the book.
Yeah, and it's all right. It's not too bad. They fight, and the good guys win. And Lord Arthur and Duke Henry are bros again.
Yeah.
And, all is well.
There's some interesting trivia stuff. They forgot to shoot Duke Henry's close-up.
Oh.
So when he rides in and he bashes one of the Deadites with his mace, they literally shot that on the side of the freeway. Because they were driving back, had everything packed up, and were done for the night. And they're like, "Shit, we missed the close up." They pulled over and just like had him smash a skeleton so they could get that close up before they called it a night.
Oh, that's funny.
And all the stuff where Ash is fighting the stop motion Bad Ash, this is done through a technique called Intravision, where the stop motion is done well in advance, right? So because that's a time consuming process. So they've animated this skeleton, and then Bruce Campbell has to record his sequence. They choreograph it and have numbers for the different marks that he has to hit. And they would call out the numbers, and he would go through this sequence so that he would match where the skeleton was. He can't see the skeleton that he's acting against. So he's just acting against a blank screen. And it's just one of these things where it's insanely technical to achieve just a few seconds of footage. Like it's so much work for so little result.
It's like claymation kind of.
Yeah, but it's like a reverse Roger Rabbit, where they animated onto live action footage that they shot ahead of time. This is like shooting live action footage to match the animation. It's hard mode on hard mode.
That sounds rough. So what do you think is a better sword fight? Ash versus Evil Ash, or He-Man versus Skeletor, that improvised battle that they did, that they won.
Oh, because they ran out of money and did it with the lights off at the end of Masters of the Universe?
Yeah. Motu or Army of Darkness ending mediocre sword fights?
I have... Oh, geez. It's tough. I'll give it to Army of Darkness, and it's not for that part. It's for where both of them are fighting with two swords up and down the stairs.
Okay.
Errol Flynn style. Like, that's tough to choreograph, too.
Sure.
Even though it's not, like, realistic combat, it's that sort of 1930s swashbuckling thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But just to time that all out, that's crazy.
So you like it for its technical aspects. See, I go with Motu because I just love Skeletor better than Evil Ash.
Oh, if we're gonna
that's my criterion. We can have whatever criterion you want. I just love Skeletor.
Skeletor, especially God Skeletor from the end of the movie
with the gold and
and
that's the ultimate Skeletor.
Let this be our final battle. Yeah. Yes. So I'd like to see Ash fight God Skeletor. And I feel like we don't get enough chainsaw. So I'd love to see the chainsaw incorporated.
Chainsaw Ash versus God Skeletor.
That'd be crazy. It'd be short. That would be the end of Chainsaw Ash.
It would be. He'd just get roasted because Skeletor's a wizard too.
Yeah. But I would like to see that.
All right, you heard it here, divers. We gotta get that. Can we get a Snyder cut of this where he adds in Skeletor or some shit? I mean, because he added in the alien guy. Oh man, like. In the Snyder movie where they...
Oh, he adds the Martian Manhunter?
He added Martian Manhunter, and he can add Skeletor. Let's make it happen.
That'd be funny.
Anyway, so they're victorious, and he wants to be sent back to his own time, so they decide they're going to make a potion from the Necronomicon, and it works.
He has to drink the potion and say the magic words, and he'll wake up in his own time. And he says goodbye to Sheila, and he rides off. And we cut back to the S-Mart, and he's there talking to Ted Raimi and explaining the story to him. This is like the fourth role that Ted Raimi plays in this movie.
Nice.
Sometimes he plays different villagers in the same scene. He gets used a lot. And he's like,
I could have been king.
Yeah, and he's like, did you say the words right this time? He's like, well, maybe I didn't say every single syllable of every word. And of course, because he fucked up the words, a Deadite attack happens at the S-Mart. And so Ash gets thrown into the sporting goods section and gets a shotgun and fights the Deadite.
It's actually not a shotgun. He has a lever action cowboy rifle, probably a 30-30, which I thought was really interesting choice there because I'm a big fan of lever action rifles. It's what I grew up shooting.
Mm-hmm. It is very cowboy style. And I kept thinking, like, how many rounds does that thing hold? Because he shoots it a lot.
It's like 7 or 8 realistically in the real world. But I mean, he shot his double barrel shotgun like 5 times in one scene. They don't care about that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I like the cowboy rifle, how he's just going off on him with it. It's awesome. And so why didn't they make a sequel to this? Why didn't they make more? Because, I mean, come on, Deadites come into the modern world.
Okay, well, technically, there is a sequel. There's a TV show called Ash versus the Evil Dead. There's 2 seasons of it.
Oh, I never saw that.
Yeah, it's on Showtime, I think. I haven't watched both seasons. We got through part of season 1, and Lisa wasn't into it, and I didn't pursue it. But I'm a little reignited on the franchise, so I might watch those seasons.
Okay.
So this is a totally different ending than the director's cut. And I had no idea for years and years that this ending existed until I was talking about the movie with someone, and our stories didn't match. You know, because we were talking about the movie, and I was saying this thing about, he's like, yeah, and he wakes up in post-apocalyptic London, and da-da-da-da. And they're like, no. He goes back to the S-Mart and fights the Deadite, and it says, "Hail to the King, baby."
Yeah,
and I was
that's
like,
how the movie ends.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not how the movie ends. He goes to sleep in his car, and he wakes up, and he takes too many drops of the potion, and he sleeps too long. And it's like, no, that's not how this movie ends. And it's like, I've seen this
Did
movie
they
a million
really
times.
do a Rip Van Winkle?
Oh, it's total Rip Van Winkle. Yeah, and it sets up a sequel where it will be a sci-fi movie, right? So they've done a horror movie, and this is like a fantasy adventure, and then the next one would be a sci-fi movie. But it never came to pass because Universal objected to the bummer ending and wanted a happy ending for it.
Sort of. Yeah, okay, I get that.
And this is the canonical ending because this is the ending that leads into the TV show. So this is the one that really counts if there's such a thing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that ending quote, "Hail to the King, baby." You know, it's funny because I remember after this movie, so many of our friends, mostly Johnny, were saying all of these ashisms all the time. And I remember people incorporating blow into their just daily speech, you know, like just regular use of these words.
So, and this is the thing, you can't always control what someone takes away from a piece of art that you make, right?
Sure.
So to me, the ashisms, as much as I love them, they're parody, right? They're parodying like the sort of one-liners like Schwarzenegger would say in his movies, like "let off some steam, Bennett," when he impales the guy with the steam pipe.
Oh God.
And so it's a parody of an action movie, and Ash is a buffoon, right? Like in clowning terms, that's the kind of clown that he is. Mm-hmm. And he's not supposed to be like an aspirational character. He's a clown. So say if you're a clownish sort of person, maybe you don't get that. And you're like, that guy is just cool. Not ironically.
Yes.
He's just cool. That's how you should treat women. That's how you should handle situations. Like they're not in on the joke because it's too close to their own reality.
Yeah, I think that's exactly true. A lot of people really thought that, you should be like, "Oh, that was just pillow talk, baby." Like,
yeah.
They thought that that's what you should say and that's how you should be, when really this is complete satire.
Yes, and some people don't get satire. It's like, have you ever been to a Steel Panther concert?
I have not. I don't know if I would pay for that.
I don't recommend it.
You went to a Steel Panther show?
I did.
Why?
Yeah, because everyone talks about how great they are, and I thought it was funny before I went to the show.
Sure, it's a joke band.
But I don't feel like the audience gets the joke. I think they think it's serious. I think
it's like the 80s Reborn.
Yeah, and I think that they I don't know, it crosses over this line when you're there. I feel like it crossed over the line of where we're laughing at the womanizing to where this is just gross and we're being gross. Okay. And so I was like, I'm not enjoying this. In fact, I'm not even going to stay through this whole show because this sucks. So that can happen. That's a real risk in satire, is that the wrong people latch onto it.
So I guess that's what didn't work. But
I don't think that's overwhelming in Deadites. I don't think that the Deadite community is largely...
Is that what they call themselves?
Yeah, the fans of the Evil Dead, yeah.
The Deadites. Okay, well then let me ask you, what worked for you? What were your personal highlights?
Okay, number one, Bruce Campbell. He's a singular force. He's such a unique performer. He's a man out of time, right? If any time between like the silent era and the mid 60s, he would have been a huge movie star. But in the modern era, he's just kind of too weird to fit any mold. He doesn't work as a regular comedian, but he doesn't really work as an action hero. I guess he kind of found his niche like on TV with like Briscoe County and Xena and those shows and stuff.
Sure.
Which kind of had that cheesy humor. But he would have been a real movie star in like the 50s. He has the looks, and like that sort of comedy worked better back then. And so I just think this is just a showcase for him, and I love it. Number two, Sam Raimi's visual style. I love all the Raimi-isms. I love the shaky cam, the Ramo cam, the push-in extreme close-ups, like all this stuff. Between this movie and Darkman, which came out just before it, you see Sam Raimi becoming the guy that makes the Spider-Man trilogy, like learning how to make a big budget action movie. These are the movies where he's figuring out the tools. And I think that's really cool. And then finally, K&B FX Group, Robert Kurtzman, Greg Nicotero, and Howard Berger. I think nowadays probably they're most famous for the effects on the Walking Dead TV show. That's their meal ticket these days. But it's similar.
It's like all 15 seasons or whatever it is.
Yeah. Similarly to Sam Raimi, this is where they learned how to make The Walking Dead, right? Like this is
making Deadites,
making just zombie after variations on Living Dead over and over again. That's just how they've made that many seasons of that show. Is the skills they learned here.
Nice.
What about you? What worked for you?
I really liked some of the cheesy horror moments. Like I like the Spirit Store graveyard with the blue lights, and I liked the cheesy books that bites him. I really liked Bad Ash and Bad Sheila. I liked all of that. I thought the horror elements that were visual, I guess the same thing you're saying, that effects team. It was pretty cool. I really did like that. And I liked the Windmill before it got into the Broken Mirror, Gulliver's Travel. Like I thought
just the atmospheric spooky stuff.
Yeah, I like that spooky vibe that they get. I liked the cheesy one-liners. Like I got a genuine, real chuckle off of them because like I remember that, and I remember thinking it's funny. I know it's satire. I think it's hilarious. And I think that I really enjoyed the I guess you'd call it intentionally bad acting, the B-movie acting. It's overdone sometimes, like with Lord Arthur and Duke Henry and, of course, Ash and all that. I really like how overdone it is because I think it's stylized. You know? It's to the point where it's intentionally bad. So that's pretty much those are the things I like.
Bad, but it is like arch, right? Like it's like stage acting. It's not realistic acting.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're trying to play up the fact that this is a B movie, despite being $11 million.
Right.
It's like they're lampooning a B movie, and I think they do that pretty well. I like that. So what didn't work for you?
So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm not a fan of RLC Sandstorm's editing. Once we get to the portion of the film that Sam Raimi directed and edited, the movie kind of just falls all apart. Like it gets very difficult to watch. It's slightly better in the theatrical cut. It's kind of excruciating in the director's cut through that sequence. You're just like, oh my God, how long will this go on? Yeah. And it's not cut smoothly. It's just like jumping, like here's a zombie puppet and here's a zombie puppet and we're just jumping around, and there's no good flow to that sequence until the two ashes come together. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
And so that's a bummer because it just takes the wind out of the movie. And then number two, I'd call it the lack of narrative advancement. The franchise itself can just feel aimless. Because the whole point of the series is just torturing Bruce Campbell. And, you know, there is a limit to how long that can be funny for. This movie is not very long. It could be even shorter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you know, at some point I used to buy like the Evil Dead comics or I guess they're Army of Darkness comics. And I just was like, what is the point of this series? And just stopped buying them. Because without actually Bruce Campbell doing this stuff, just like there's no point in reading it because there's no story.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell, even in his memoir, If Chins Could Kill, he's like, it's a dumbbell story. It's like, there's no real plot. It's just a sequence of events.
That's funny.
And that's the truth. What about you? What didn't work for you?
So that's actually the first thing on my list. There isn't a plot. it's just a linear series of scenes. They're nebulously connected because they have the same character in them.
Right.
And there's no plot. This movie does not have a plot. It's guy is in medieval England, wants to go home, goes to graveyard, gets thing, wins, goes home. It's like this is a very amateurish plot. Like the story is low rent, like not in a good way. I think they definitely could have made it interesting, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, to use you compared it to D&D. It's a very simple quest.
It's
right?
a bad D&D game. Like seriously, I can run a better D&D game than this easily, like without planning.
You run much more complex D&D games than the plot of this movie.
This movie is real boring. And that was my next thing. This movie's boring. Like it's so phoneable, but since we're doing this podcast for it, I will not get out my phone.
Right.
But there were so many times where I'm just like, please stop fighting the mini U's. I'm just so tired of it. You drank boiling water to get at the little mini U in your tummy.
Oh. Since you brought up the boiling water, that scene always drives me nuts because he grabs the kettle with his skin hand and not with his metal hand. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, you have a robot hand. Why would you grab it with the hand that can be burnt?
Yeah, and so then I also have it on my what didn't work, the bad acting. Sometimes it's just real bad. You're just like, like that's not stylized. That's just terrible.
Okay. Do you have a specific example of that?
I think Sheila is just super cringy in the first part of the movie.
You know what's
Before
crazy?
she becomes evil, Sheila, she's just cringy bad.
So what's so crazy about this? Mbeth Davidst, she's a South African actress.
Oh, okay.
So in 1993, she had 2 movies come out. This one and Schindler's List.
Whoa.
Because she's like typically like, as her career went on,
actress.
She's known as being like a prestige actress. Like she does prestige films. Like she's not a B movie actress. So this is such a weird place for her.
Yeah, she doesn't do a good job in this. I think that the guy that did Lord Arthur also, like, he was not good.
Marcus Gilbert.
And I just thought the acting was pretty low level, like film school acting. And then my last point is I'm just agreeing with you again, is this movie is longer than it needed to be. And I pegged it at about 30 minutes longer than it needed to be. This could have been a tight 50 minutes.
Then it's a short film though. It's not.
That's fine with me.
Right. But
it could have been a really fun short film.
Yeah.
Instead it was a dragging full length.
Yeah. Cause Sam Raimi even said that I saw an interview where he said that it would work best at 60 minutes. He thought it would.
I think you could do an hour.
Yeah.
It would have been more fun that way.
But you can't get a studio to release an hour-long movie. That's just not. They won't do it.
God. And, you know, if this was made in 2022, this could have been a Netflix thing or an Amazon or an HBO, and it could have been tight and it could have been cool.
Yeah.
They may not have given him $11 million to do an hour-long thing, but with modern technology, probably wouldn't have needed it.
It's true.
All right, so that's what didn't work for me. So what did you rate this bad boy?
I've been around on it, and I'll let you in on my thought process. After watching the director's cut, I've been sitting at a 2, and I've kind of been sitting at a 2 all week. And then this morning I watched the theatrical cut, and I thought cutting that 11 minutes out of it got us up to the 3. Just like it's a squeaker of a 3.
Oh man, it barely crested a 3 for you.
Yeah. That's not to say I don't love this movie, because I do. Sometimes the second watch for me, especially if I wasn't like loving it, it's hard for me to go back and watch the movie again to take notes. I was happy to put this on and watch it again, even though I watched it earlier this week.
Interesting.
This is a comfort watch for me.
Okay, well, I don't think it's a secret. After my criticism, I give this a 1 star.
Ooh, ouch.
This is my worst rated film in the podcast. I said to Carrie partially, like, you know, when we're at the back half of the movie, like, God, why did we choose this movie? And then at the end, when I stood up, I was like, well, that's done. Thank God. Yeah, it's just not entertaining to me. It's just a waste of time. I would rather sit and watch YouTube videos of miniature painting or disc golf technique or talking about beer or you know, like, whatever, I would rather watch hoof trimming videos for 80 minutes.
Yeah, hoof trimming videos are good.
I mean, this is not, though. That's the thing. So I give it a 1. I realize it has a cult following and people love its charm and they love how crazy it is. But just subjectively, it's not a good movie.
Okay.
And I mean, obviously, the reviews are all over the place because it's some people are rating it just based on camp and fun and whatever. And so it seems to be that you are kind of on the mark with it. Like Metacritic gives it a 59.
Okay.
IMDb is 7.4 and Rotten Tomatoes is 73%. So I think that's solidly a 3, which tells me that there's a lot of people rating it real low and a lot of people rating it real high. It's settled in the middle. I was one of the low because I just didn't enjoy myself. Yeah. I would have rather not watched this movie. I'd rather reclaim that 80 minutes.
Okay.
Reclaim it for homework of all things.
Harsh, but you've justified it. I think you've made your case.
All right, well, let's take a break and then come back with our closing segment.
Okay, welcome back, divers. It's time for our final segment, the one where Ask Dave, what are you into right now?
All right. Well, I have not been doing a ton of stuff like I've been saying, as far as stuff that I have been watching or recommending to people. All I can do is reinforce what I said about going and watching the new survival shows, Naked and Afraid XL. As far as what I've actually been up to, is I played in my first disc golf tournament recently. Nice. It was a doubles tournament with my wife Carrie. We threw really well. We did a good job, better than we thought we would play. It was a little bit grueling because we're playing 2 rounds in a single day. So that's 18 holes on about a 9,000 foot course. So walking several miles, doing a lot of exercise. So I was pretty sore, sore the next day. I had a really good time doing it. But that's basically it. One of the beautiful parts about doubles play is that you don't suffer from a real bad throw, because it takes both of you to throw a bad throw in order for you to have to stick with it, because you choose the better of the 2 throws.
Oh, interesting.
So like we both throw off the tee, and then whichever one we like better, we both go to it, and then we both throw from there, and then whichever one we like better, we go to that. And then, once you're close enough, you both get putts at it. So you basically get 2 tries at every throw with your partner. And so very rarely are you ever just totally blowing up a hole with a terrible score. We only blew up 1 hole out of 36, and that's where I threw it into a pond and Carrie threw it into a tree. And so we were pretty screwed on that one. But other than that, 35 good holes of disc golf. And so that was nice, and great weather. So that's very about cool. It for me. I'll just keep it short. What about you? What are you into right now?
I really was struggling to get something for this because I just haven't really started anything new. But I decided to do a callback to when a few episodes back I showed you some coming attraction trailers.
Oh.
And, I showed you the Batman and Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Those both came out and were great. And the third one has finally arrived. And so I've seen Robert Eggers' The Northman.
Oh, I want to see that.
Oh, dude. So good. all three, also, I'm going to pat myself on the back. All three movies that I did for Coming Attractions have been masterpieces. These have
masterpieces.
Have been exceptional films.
Is it theater only, or
this is still theater only? Okay. Yeah, the Batman's home now, though. You can watch that.
I just haven't been able to
carve out 3 hours.
3 hours for a comic book movie.
So this is Robert Eggers, director of The Witch and The Lighthouse. It's co-written by him and Sion, Icelandic writer. You were concerned about historical accuracy, so I'm going to give the bona fides. 3 historical advisors: archaeology professor Neil Price, author of Children of Ash and Elm.
I've read that book. I talked about it on this podcast.
Folklorist Terry Gunnell from the University of Iceland, and Viking historian Johanna Friorik's daughter are the 3 historical consultants.
And I've actually seen the second fellow, the Icelandic guy, on Dr. Jackson Crawford's YouTube channel. He's interviewed him.
Yeah,
I know Jackson Crawford did some consulting regarding the runic writing that they use, because he's a specific linguist. That's his area of expertise. He consulted on this too.
Yeah, because all the title cards are in runic. Every time there's like a scene change,
and it's all in period correct writing. It's all proper.
And so this is based on the saga of Amleth, who this is the inspiration for Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Yeah,
and it's a very melancholy Dane. Like, this is a grim, dark fucking movie. And Robert Eggers, the Lighthouse was a black and white film. This is a color film, but there's certain points in the movie where it goes very nearly black and white, where like the only
super desaturated.
Yeah, where like the only thing that will be in color is like the flame or something, and the whole screen is black and white. It's so grim. It's not a feel-good movie, and don't go looking for a happy ending, but it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's brutal. It's a real tough movie. When I said it looked like a highbrow version of Conan the Barbarian, I'll stand by that. And Robert Eggers cited Conan when he was on Mark Maron's podcast the other day. So I think there is some intentional nods to Conan the Barbarian in it.
Okay.
But no fantasy. Or no, there's fantasy, because there's a folkloric mythological.
Yeah, there's a mythology.
There's Valkyries
and
Odin and Norse mythology. But yeah, so big recommend on the Northmen, as long as you're in for the grimdark and don't want a happy ending movie.
I'm all about the grimdark. I'm definitely gonna wait till I can stream it and watch it at home. But yeah, I'm 100%. I'm the target audience for that movie.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you want to give them the call to action?
Yeah, let's go ahead and subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, as well as YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. Don't forget to leave us a review. A 5-star review costs you nothing, but means everything to us.
New episodes of Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse drop the 1st and 15th of every month, and you can find us on all social media platforms across the Metaverse as at Deep Dive the Meta. We are on Twitter until Elon kicks us off. Facebook,
or makes us pay to use it.
Facebook till Zuckerberg gets tired of us talking shit. But we're also on Pinterest, which no one's interested in buying.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.